driving to the basket and I have a shot fake off that speed stop, and I feel like I have some space between me and the defender, I can rip the ball through, I can step through to get past them. But if I feel crowded, if I have contact, if I stop and my shoulder has someone pushing into it, and I can feel that, now I don't have that option. Now I have the option to back pivot to that same place. And so the reason why our footwork platforms are made out of real wood maple floor is so you can pivot properly. So make sure that you can stop, shot fake, and back pivot, staying low so I can jump for the finish. Now, whenever we're dealing with this type of move, there's a lot of contact. So if you're able to stay low and keep your feet on those platforms, jump off both feet, this will be a move you'll be able to use in the game, responding to that contact. Let's take a peek. Now all we're doing is working on our overall control, trying to stop as clean as we can. And that's our back pivot with some accountability. Another way to finish at the basket, or to sell a finish at the basket, is with footwork we call an overstep. Now, an overstep is really when you sense yourself going too far, or maybe you're getting contact, and you could have continued to take your full 2 steps, but you would have caught yourself in a little bit of a hole there. You would have been in some trouble. And so what we want to be able to do is extend ourselves out to those 2 steps, but stop ourselves and be able to come back to that same finish. And so what we want to be able to do is use the platforms to really separate our feet, making sure we're hitting them. But my pivot, my step out pivot away from the rim, should actually get me back to my original platform where I feel like I could have done a pull up, a turn around, or a little hook. So let's go ahead and take a look at the footwork of our overstep. I want to show that ball if I can, showing that I could have had that finish. I want to try to control my stutters. Don't want those boards to get in my head. And that's our overstep to our step out pivot. We're going to dive into our push footwork, which is another way to access our drop position in our stance. But before we do, let's just quickly touch on walking practice, or the rhythm of your walk and your timing. When you're walking with the ball, a natural walk would be opposite. Left foot with right ball, right foot with left. That would be the natural rhythm of a player's walk. And so a lot of players don't even have the timing, so it makes it hard for them to set up certain footwork. But in our push footwork, we're actually going to use what we call a stutter dribble, which is we're going to interrupt the timing of our natural walk. So if I was walking left and I decide to dribble right, that's a stutter dribble. and I'm going to use that stutter dribble to launch myself into my push. And so this is really key because a lot of players will naturally want to push themselves forward off of their top foot. Now, this will work if I'm already in a run, which is what we call a skip into your push. Because my momentum is already going forward, it's easier to access this. But out of a push, I don't necessarily have momentum. So if I don't have momentum, it's very difficult to push myself forward off of this foot and still then get it behind me as I land. It's just not as easy. It's unnatural. And so if I can go off of my stutter dribble or my outside leg, I can push and just stay in that split stance as I launch myself towards my defender. So that's our push. What I want you to picture is our defender is waiting for us. They're right here in this stance in front of me. And so what I want you to imagine here is not dribbling the ball into their space where they can crowd me. I don't want to get close with my dribble necessarily, but I'm going to launch my body into his space. I'm going to make him feel me. I'm going to make him really try to decide how he's going to read or play off of my aggressiveness with my push. So I'm going to push him to his heels, or if he doesn't react, I can explode. So that's the push concept. Now we're going to dive into a push to our go. Here we go. I want to start off in a minimal space right here. I'm just going to take small steps, left, right. I'm having 2 dribbles, so I maximize that stutter dribble. And out of that dribble, I'll launch myself into my drop and explode. That's my push. Really explode at them. The momentum you can create out of a push is devastating to your defense. And that's your push footwork. Launch yourself into your defender's space, land in your drop position, and just play off of how they react. Now, footwork is repetitious, and so we're accessing the same drop, but it's changed because all my momentum is going forward. So your feet have to be that much better in that drop position in order to have your options. So as I push and land in my drop position and they start to really react, now I have my other options. So now I'm going to do a push to a drop through. Now, once again, I don't want to get too far off the platform. I can be here to about here. You have to feel that. I just don't want to overextend it. So the closest I can get to that dot, the better, in my push drop through. But you're going to have your own feel for this as you go. Let's take a look at it. And that's your push to your drop, your through, and your go. Do your best to hit those spots, feel for your space, keep your space, and be explosive. Last option out of our push, which puts us in our drop, is our shot attempt, our shot option. And so if I feel that my push, my throwing myself into their space, has caused my defender to give me space, now I can step right into that shot. Once again, when we're shooting, it's not about the dots anymore. I want this foot to stay planted, but I want to get into where my footwork likes to be in that shot, where your stance is. Everybody's body is just a little bit different. Let's take a look at the push into our drop shot. Really feel like you could have shot it. That's all this is. Could you have shot it? Feel for the edges of the board to help correct some small mistakes. That's your push into your shot. The term drop really references your hips falling, you're dropping. I would drop into my stance. But there's also times where I may want to lift. Our lift footwork is getting into our drop by lifting first. And what this really does is gives me momentum and more time to make my decision. So if I were to drop, I have to make my reads quicker. Where if I lift myself in the air and then land in my drop, I got that much longer to make my reads, that much longer to let you react. And when I hit the floor with more force where I can really explode off the board or off the spot of the floor and drive. And so a lift is accessing our drop by going up first. But we're going to use the same footwork principles. Let's take a look. If I was dribbling with my right hand, that means my lift puts me in a drop where my left foot would go back, my right foot would go forward. And so take a look at what would happen if I use my left foot. If I lift myself up with one foot, I have to take this foot and slide it back to land in that spot. That can be done, but it's a lot more difficult. So a more natural lift would be lifting off of my outside leg, which frees my back foot to just simply access that position, and I can get to my drop that much easier. So when we do a lift, we're using the principle of our outside leg being the weight distributor. So that's going to be the foot that distributes the weight so I get in my drop and explode. Let's take a look at the lift into our go. Just stand on that board, make sure you keep your space, lift and exaggerate with your right leg or outside leg, and get right into that drop. I can exaggerate, I can lift strong, I can make high, I can lift low, but I want to lift a little bit with that leg. Now it's my left. Trying to access my drop position. And that's your lift into your drop go. That's all we're doing. It's creatively accessing our drop from different positions in different situations. We're going to take a look at what we call our drop pivot. Now, we already know that a drop is the splitting of your feet, but really what a drop is the stance in which you're dropping low. And so it's a splitted stance, obviously right here. That's a drop. A drop pivot, however, is only moving one foot at a time. Now, one of the things that you've probably been told is it's wrong to step backwards. And you've been told that because it can be. If I take a step back and I go back to my heel, obviously I didn't give myself an advantage. This would be very ineffective for me. And so that would be one way that just really would make a lot of sense. I'm not explosive here. I'm wasting movement. There's not much of an advantage. However, if all I do is let my shoulders and my hips drop and let a foot go back, now you can't argue that I'm leaning back or I've wasted movement. I haven't done anything. I'm still in the exact same spot. But my advantage is simple. I'm not explosive here. I am explosive here. So a drop position is my explosive position. So a drop pivot is a more subtle way to access my drop without having to move my top foot. Now, we're not going to use the full extent of the dots right now. I'm going to do a quicker drop pivot. So I'm going to straddle the logo, the icon, right about the middle of the board, and I'm going to let one foot go back to that back dot, pocketing the basketball so I can explode. We're going to start with triple threat. Triple threat, ball on my right side. I can hold the ball more towards my knee. I can feel the defense. I can rock a little bit, but when my foot hits that back dot, I want to explode. So I reach back, I can even see it, and then explode off of it. You're really trying to gain explosion from that position. So regardless of which way you go, I'm feeling for it, I'm judging my defender, I'm measuring their position, and I'm working on being explosive out of that footwork. So you're really just reaching backwards for that dot and seeing how explosive you can be. Put this to the test and see how explosive you are from that position. And I'm willing to bet you feel much, much better from your drop pivot. That's your drop pivot using the back dots in a skinnier stance to explode in those lines. Let's take a look at our drop pivot off the dribble. And so once again, this is a more subtle version. If I do a full drop and splitting at my feet, it can take a little bit more time. But if I kind of can sneak it on my defender, it means I can walk into my space and I can just naturally bring one foot back and go. So it can be a lot more subtle of a move. And so that's what we're going to work on, is just sneaking it in, finding our explosive stance, and reacting. Because if my defender doesn't realize I'm explosive, they're not ready for the explosion. And so I just want to walk, drop pivot, and explode. Step onto the board, relax, drop pivot, and go. Don't let my right foot slide back. I want to stay right around that icon. Once again, the great things about these boards, if I miss my spot, I can feel it. I want to feel that I'm staying on that platform each time. And that's your drop pivot off the dribble in the skinnier stance version. A starter step is a way for a player to rev their engine. It's a way to kind of get momentum built up. We can do a starter step with a push, pushing ourselves forward. We can do a starter step by lifting ourselves up. We can do a starter step by dropping one foot back into our drop pivot. And we can do a starter step by taking a side step. And so right now, I'm just going to allow one foot to go towards the side. And all that little reposition does is find a little bit of footing. It widens out my stance, and I can explode in a new direction. It's just a little subtle thing that you can do to gain advantage. That's all we're really focused on right now. So to work on the side step, what we're going to do is we're going to start on the right side. I want to have my right heel on this dot. I'm dribbling pretty much on that top dot. And when I want to side step, I can slightly just move my foot over. This isn't an aggressive jab. I'm just going to reposition my body and as I pocket the ball. And now it's put me in a position to have a better opportunity to explode outside of simply doing a full drop. And so it's a subtle move to gain advantage. So all I want to do is step on the right side, slide my foot over, and explode into my go. Let's take a look at both sides, full speed. Just be nice and relaxed until the moment you drive. Biggest key here is pocket that ball so you have an advantage. And that's our side step with a pocket technique. Give that one a shot. Start working on that starter step. Now let's say I've started with a side step, and I start to bring my foot over to the side. I pocket the ball, and my defender reads it. So they start to cheat towards the drive that they've seen before. Now I can use that same pocket and step as I go through our legs. So now there's no split action here. These are all steps. But notice once I've gone through my legs, because I've stayed on those dots, I'm still in my split stance. I'm still explosive. I'm not overextending my steps where I lose my back hip, lose my back leg where I can't explode. So once again, this platform, this dot pattern puts us in perfect stance to find explosion off the dribble. So now we want to start with a side step pocket through our legs, and explode off for 2 steps. Let's take a look at it live. Make sure you're hitting all those dots. 1, 2, 3. And that's our side step, pocket, through, and go. A lot of times players are only taught to drive north and south in straight lines. Now, straight lines are effective ways to drive, but that doesn't mean that east and west can't open up north and south. And so if I have a defender that's guarding me in straight on position, maybe I don't necessarily feel I have an advantage on the drive. But if I can force him to slide first, I might open myself up an advantage or a new line. And so what we're going to do with our bound is use quick east to west motion to put myself in a drop position and be able to find a new line to drive. So from a defensive standpoint, they must slide quickly and try to recover. And that can be a very difficult offensive move for them to guard and defend. And so we're going to use our bound footwork to land in our drop position and explode forward. Now, the keys here, the concept here, is I still want my back foot to hit that inside dot. And so I don't want to think of 1 foot at a time. But what I want to be able to do is let this foot go behind me so it will land on this dot, and this foot will land on that dot. But once again, it's not 1 foot at a time, it's 2. So I need to let myself get in the air. And so I want to let it go behind, but land pretty simultaneously. A pop, pop, not a pop, pop. And so right now we got to be able to get in the air, land in our bound, and explode. I'm going to pull off of my dribble side leg and let my leg go behind as I explode in that direction. Let's take a look at our bounds as we explode forward. Just got to be able to land and be ready to explode. If you need to glance down time to time to see your feet, feel free to take advantage to see that you're mastering that technique. And that's our bound to our go, landing in our drop position so we can have more options. Let's play with some different ways that we can access our bound footwork. Once again, we want to use east to west to open up north and south. But I don't want to make it obvious that I'm going east to west, so I can use a north and south threat first. A north and south threat might be a through the legs. Right now it looks like I'm attacking in a straight line. And so I might even put my defender on their heels a little bit just with a simple move. I at least have them more feeling that threat. So from a through the legs, I can then slide into that same bound. Now I'm landing in my drop position. A lot of players would land here, which we would call a bounce off, which all that would do is maybe get me a shot opportunity. Or we're landing in a drop, which is what our bound is, so we can have more of a threat to attack. So we're going to start off with a through the legs, right into our bound footwork. Let's take a look. Just walk into the move and play with your options. Just let that ball stay in your pocket after you go through your legs. And that's your bound from a through. You might call that a through bound. Give it a shot. See if you can find different lines and angles. to take a look at a combo into our bound. We're going to go through the legs, behind the back. But one thing I want you to understand as we go is I'm going to call attention back to our eyes. Once again, a lot of times we get obsessed with having to look up from a myth that tells us that it's going to give us a bad habit if we look down. But let's be really, really honest with ourselves. Go ahead and look at Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, and other great ball handlers in the NBA. And when they go behind their back on a wrap, tell me if they don't look down. Because what I see is the player will simply take a peek and keep going. That's not going to cost them a moment. In fact, it's a whole lot more realistic to make sure that they recover the ball. So don't be obsessed with your eyes. Look at the best ball handlers in the world and see that they'll sometimes peek during the game to ensure confidence in their ball handling, especially after difficult moves. And so we're going to use our eyes to see the dots. We're going to use the eyes to sometimes locate the ball. Then just make sure you can see where you're going and start playing with it. So on a through the legs, behind the back, we're going to set up our defender one way. That could be with a step or a split. And we're going to put the ball behind our back. Now when we do that, we don't just want to slide over. I want to put myself into a drop position. So when I go through the legs behind my back, I can land still in a drop by letting my outside or my leg slide behind, my dribble side foot, my outside leg, get in front. And so we want to be able to get our bound action while we do the move. So I'm going to start off with a beginner version, and then we'll take it more advanced as we go. So as I approach, I'm going to let the ball bounce before the platform, and I'm going to give myself a little bit more time to get the ball into my pocket as I access that bound footwork. Let's take a look at our combo. Doing my best here to keep my hand behind the ball, not underneath the ball on my bound. Just trying my best to hit those spots. Not always going to be perfect. Just locate them best you can. Now I want my ball to actually hit the board, hit the platform, which is the more difficult version. Just keep attacking it with full speed. Feel the game. And that's our bound from our combo. Through the legs, behind the back, find that bound and explode. Once again, when you're dealing with ball handling and footwork, it's not how many steps you take, it's about when you actually pick up the basketball. That point in time, when you pick it up, when you secure that ball, now your steps start to count. And so as long as the ball is floating and not being carried, you can squeeze a lot of steps in. And so toe slides is a phenomenal technique. You'll see a lot of Steph Curry using toe slides. Kobe Bryant was phenomenal with toe slides. But it's your ability to let your feet work below the surface in between pickups of the basketball. Where a lot of people, when they move side to side, just take multiple dribbles. We're going to let one dribble take us where we want to go. So we're going to use a turn pound type of technique, which is going to let the ball naturally flow to the right side. And as the ball is floating, we're letting multiple steps take place. Now, once again, all this is doing right now is giving us accountability of space, of where I want to actually pick up the ball. And if I can do it consistently each time, I'm really understanding the control that I'm going to need. Here's toe slides. We'll take it both ways. Where I pick it up is what matters. Just let that ball move in your hands. And those are multiple steps between our dribbles, picking it up with what we've already discussed, a foot replacement technique. Now that you've learned learned the concept of toe slides, we're now going to be able to take it into our drop and go. So now you got to really start thinking. Not only do I have to get to a certain space, but if I have the technique available to quickly pocket and go, I can squeeze in a little bit more dribble manipulation. Now this one you really have to master because the ball's in your hands longer than we normally want, and it can be called a carry if you're not good at it. But if you get good and smooth with this, it can be a great weapon for you. So we're going to try to get our footwork to the boards with slides and to the dots with our actual drop and go. Let's take a look. And those are toe slides right into a drop and go. Do your best to hit those spots and just give yourself some accountability to when you got to make that drive. Very advanced, very challenging. Try to pocket the ball and attack. A foot replacement is a key that you need to be able to have to regain balance, regain positioning of your feet. I can replace my feet both together, which is a foot replacement, or I might choose to have a single leg foot replacement so I can have other options out of that. And so we're going to focus our time on the single leg foot replacement, allowing one leg to slide underneath our hips to gain different types of advantages and opportunities. We're going to start this one in the post. And so right now, if I'm starting in the post, and maybe this would be my position, we're going to do a breakdown. My dribbles can be more on this side of the platform. What I want you to be able to see is, if I want to gain an advantage that way, I can use a single leg foot replacement to give me a benefit. And so as I dribble the ball and the ball floats, I can single leg foot replace to the middle of the platform, and then I can push into a 1-2. Now when I show that slow, that probably would look like a carry, could look like a travel, but really the key is in the pickup of the basketball. My steps are not going to count in a referee's mind until my dribble is no longer live. While I can still dribble again, my steps are not counting. Just like I can take as many steps as I want between my dribbles because my ball is live. And so by using my single leg foot replacement from this post position, I can simply slide it under it and pick it up as late as possible so I have the ability to get right into my move. And so I'm picturing the basket is right here, and I got to be able to single leg foot replacement as I turn into what could be a hook, a baby hook, maybe a little pull up. Right now we're just going to break down the footwork. Let's take a look. Float the ball as I single leg foot replace. Float, step, and pick up. Notice how much space I'm able to cover with this technique. And that's your single leg foot replacement to a push 1-2 out of the post position. We're going to take a look at a single leg foot replacement into a step back. Now, the concept of a single leg foot replacement is to regain my balance as I bring a foot underneath my hips, but also extend the type of distance that I can create. If I was to do a through the legs move, and maybe you gave me some space, or I feel like I can just step to the side, if I keep this foot down and I just try to step over, I create a little bit of space, but I might not have had enough space to actually get a shot or the options that I wanted. But if I have the ability to let my feet work below the surface as the ball floats, I can extend the type of distance that I can create. It doesn't waste any further time because the ball is still live. And so if I go through my legs split, for instance, and the ball floats up, but I bring a foot underneath my hip, now I have all this extra space to create to step to the side. So that single leg foot replacement can be the advantage you need to actually create the space required to get your shot. And so we're going to use these dots as our guide. I'm going to split to the dots. I'm going to try my best to at least get to the icon or past so I can push to the side. That's our accountability. This isn't going to be enough for me right now. I want to get to here or greater as I step to the side for my step back. Let's take a look. See if you can create a rhythm off of that single leg foot replacement. Ball goes to my pocket as I step back to help gain momentum. And that's your single leg foot replacement to a step back. All your focus should be on your footwork and your accountability, using these dots to ensure you're covering enough space. Put yourself in a game frame of mind with a defender on your hip. Now, if I have a defender on my hip and I'm dribbling the ball in this spot, I want to be able to access my drop. I want to be able to access my threat. So I have to be able to turn and be able to rotate right into this position. Back foot on this dot, front foot on this dot. I've accessed my drop. I know my options. But a lot of players might see that, or they might try that, but they don't understand the detail. So all they see is that somebody kind of jumps and turns. Now notice, if that's all I did, my body weight is forward. Now if my defender was right here, right on that hip, and I just do this, I haven't done anything. If anything, I've turned over the ball. I have no options. So it's all about the art of keeping your space. So your back foot right now is your space keeper in your hip rotation. It's your partial pivot foot. I got to use that foot to turn on to be able to then split my feet and access my drop footwork. My front leg, which my defender is leaning on, I can use to turn my hips. As that goes back, my hips will swivel. And so that's the detail within your hip rotation. Let's just take a look at a few reps. Start off a little slow and feel that footwork a little bit. And turn. Try to access your pocket. You might carry a little bit as you go slow. You want to make sure that it's hitting your pocket. Now try to speed that up. And if you can access your drop, get as close to those dots as possible, you're going to be a weapon out of that position. You swivel, you turn, and now you have your options. So let's say somebody's putting pressure on your hip, and you want to perform a hip rotation, go. Now, what you got to be able to picture is maybe there's some weight pushing against this hip. Here's a tip. If you feel pressure on your hip, then take your hip away. Give them nothing to hold. Give them nothing to press into. If someone's leaning into my hip and I rotate, where can they hit? Where can they hit? Where can they push? Where can they really feel? I've opened myself up. They have to respect that. Let's say they don't. They fall forward a little bit. Now I got them on a hip rotation, go. So that's what you're picturing in your head. If I can rotate and explode out 2 steps, I can get that pull up, or obviously I could have taken it further to the basket. We're just going to keep working on our speed stop to work on our footwork and our discipline in that move. Let's take a look at our hip rotation, go. Put them on my hip, rotate and explode. I can hip rotate at a slower pace. I can hip rotate at a quick pace. You can mix that up. And that's your hip rotation go. To go to the other side, all you got to keep in mind is rotate right, left. Make sure you feel those dots, ball that left hand, and explode off. That's your hip rotation go. Start to put in that work. sometimes imagination is the aspect of training that can hold you back. If you can't activate your imagination, then this won't work. Because drills don't work. They just don't. You have to find the game. You have to activate the game here for the drill to become a skill. And so for our hip rotation go, I want to put you more into that imaginative state. I want you to back your defender in, and as soon as you get them where you want, perform your hip rotation, hit those spots, and explode. So let's do it more live. I'll step into them, I'll push them back, and I'll go when I want to beat them. Let's take a look at the hip rotation go as we back our defender into space. Here we go. Whenever I want to drive, but right now my signal is when my last foot leaves the platform. That front leg. It's off. I hip rotate and I explode. That's your hip rotation go as you back your defender in. As soon as my foot leaves that platform, rotate back onto it, both feet, and attack. Now, what is a hip rotation? Yes, it's your ability to rotate your hips, but really more importantly, it's a way to access the most dangerous footwork in basketball, which was our drop. So all we're really doing right now is finding different ways to access the footwork we want to use in our drop footwork. So if you already have the drop mastered, once you hip rotate and you find this spot, you got all your options. So you could shoot out of that, you could go through, you could even drop and create space by pulling back. Right now, let's just take a look at our hip rotation drop through, but I'm going to go ahead and add the go to that as well, since we've already worked on this. Let's take a look at our hip rotation drop through to our go. We're just stacking terms on terms now. That's why you got to write these down, learn them, so you can master your game. Here we go. And that's our hip rotation, drop through, go. Stack those terms, learn those moves. Now the beauty of a hip rotation is your ability to move 2 feet at one time. So you don't have to pivot. When you're young, all you learn is pivots. That's a lot of the introduction. So you just learn it taking one step at a time, 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. So in the advanced level, once you've dribbled the ball, you have to understand you no longer have to pivot. It no longer has to be 1 foot at a time. So using drop footwork or hip rotations are pivot replacements. And so just like when my drop, I was able to use both feet to access this position, or my hip rotation, if I have my back to the defender, I have the ability now to put the ball down to free up my feet. I don't have to pivot and face. And just look at what just happened when I did. I pivoted off this platform. Now, nothing wrong with this. You're going to use pivots in the game. But what if this was the area I liked? What if this is the area I wanted to be? What if this is the spot of the floor I want to attack from? I don't want to be over here. That's help side right there. And so what you'll see a lot of pros do is if they have a back to the basket, to keep their space, they'll dribble in place. They'll dribble where it's protected and use that to turn into their same drop. And so we're going to try to get all the way around into a 180 hip rotation and explode. Now, real key point here. These dots are guides. You're not always going to hit them perfectly. You could be a little bit off at times. We just don't want you to be here. We don't want you to be here. We don't want you to be over here. So don't get so picky that you pick apart your game like that. Just do the best you can to hit those spots so you can be as consistent as possible. So I'm going to put my defender on my back and do a hip rotation 180. That time I felt myself slip off the board, so I want to be a little bit more consistent with my width. The great thing about these platforms is I can feel them a little bit. You know, if you just have dots on the floor, that's fine. But I like the feel of my feet. That last one, for instance, I felt being a little bit here. I want to move that back a little bit. Another rep, I felt myself slip off a little bit. So those are reminders that my footwork could have improved in those situations. We're all going to mess up. We're all going to make mistakes. What we're looking for is accountability for our footwork. And that's what this platform provides us in the footwork training system. Once again, let's put you in a game situation. Defender might be on your hip, playing slightly behind you, and you don't want this. This might be where the defense wants you, but you want to drive that way. Now, a lot of times what players will do is they'll try to spin out and pivot, but we move away from the basket, my defender just simply recovers. And I never put myself in a option-filled stance or an explosive stance. So we don't necessarily want to pivot away. Other times, players might try to spin towards them. But once again, you have to picture the defense is already on your hip. That means I'm just going to be going through their contact. I don't always want contact. I want options. And so a hip rotation spin is your ability to go from this position into this position. This is the drop that I want in that instance in time. I wanted this option to drive that way or read. Maybe I decide to come back because it's an option-filled stance. So in order to learn the hip rotation spin, there's a very advanced set of footwork that you can learn quickly using our dot system. And so right now, what I want you to understand is the process of my feet. So we're going to take this step by step. If I'm dribbling the basketball and I jab my defender slightly away, maybe I've repositioned them or they cut me off. I then want to be able to control my footwork where my inside or my outside foot, the foot away from my defender, replaces itself. We call this a single leg foot replacement. A foot replacement was sliding 2 feet underneath our hips. A single leg is sliding 1 foot underneath our hips to control and balance ourselves. So if I do a single leg foot replacement, I can start to partially pivot. Now I need to be able to turn all the way around to land in my drop position. So let's take a look at the footwork again. I need my right foot or my outside foot right now to be able to get all the way back to that back dot. I need my jab foot that I started with to get all the way around to that dot. And so we do that by using our single leg foot replacement. I jab, replace, and turn into my drop position. Another detail that I want you to grasp here is how I change hands. I don't need to spin the ball somewhere. In this position, the ball is protected right on the platform. So all I'm going to do is release the ball and do a hand exchange to replace it. So as I do my single leg foot replacement, I turn into that ball, it accesses my drop, and I explode. That's the breakdown of our hip rotation spin. If you can't get it with the ball, just take it away. But now let's take a look at it full speed. Put them on your hip, play with it a little bit. And that's your hip rotation spin. Now, I've only showed it to the right side. We'll show it the left side with without the ball to help you learn it both ways and to give you a way to learn it if the basketball is too difficult. Let's take a look at our hip rotation spin footwork without a ball going to the left. Now this might be the way you start to learn this because the hands can be your distraction. So I want you to see your feet. I want to jab, I want to replace, which helps me start to turn my body, and I want to rotate, landing in that drop position to explode. Try to do that quicker as you learn. Jab, replace, and drop. Just like dance class. Try to study your feet. Try to speed it up as you go. That's your hip rotation spin without the ball. Use that if you need to first, then bring the ball back into it. That's your hip rotation and all the options you have on it. If you're going to master a great spin move, you need to understand about where that spin move is going to take you. You need to control your space. You need to control your own environment. The only problem that we see a lot of times with spins is players don't know where they're going to end up until they've arrived there. And so we're going to use our platform as our spot to stop. But we're going to be able to spin off the platform and make sure we can arrive on it. And so right now we're going to work on the footwork of our jump stop, which we'll do off the platform. So right now we're going to do a skip into a pound dribble, into a jump stop as we do that. And I'm going to do a pickup off of this. So as I rip the ball around, I'm going to get to anywhere on this platform. My goal would be somewhere in the middle to be able to pick the ball up at that time. If I pick the ball up too soon, now that would be a travel, and I'm not going to get to where I want to be. So it's all about the timing of your pickup that will make this a legal move or a travel. So we're going to go both ways, spinning onto our platform. Phenomenal way to challenge the end point of that move. Let's take a look at our spins. And those are spins with stop accountability using the footwork training system. Still on the topic of our spins, we've been able to stop and pick up the ball at the right time, but just dribble placement is important as well. If I want to possibly keep my dribble and I do a spin, I want to know where that ball is going to be placed. I still want it by my body. Now there's going to be times in the game, nothing is always permanent, or I might want to push the ball out a little bit. I can make those decisions in the game. But let's at least have the ability to control it as well and keep it by my body, by my feet. So in our spin, we're going to sync up a dribble step concept where I have the ability to both hit feet and ball on that platform. Let's take a look. Now that's an advanced concept. It adds a challenge to a spin, and it just makes it a little bit more difficult. In other words, it makes it more real. If you're going to have a spin, know where you want to place the ball and control your movements. Give that one a try. Let's take a look at the spin seal. The spin is a common move where players just simply turn the ball as they spin. That would be the basics of a spin move that a lot of players might do. But a spin seal is once again utilizing the space that I have and then reading out of that space. So I want you to put yourself in a diagonal position. We're going to use the diagonals of the board to hold us accountable. So right now, the defender would be more so on my hip, the inside. And so if I want to drive that direction, but I still want to remain maximum protective here, I want to be in maximum protection, then I might not be able to,